Yashodanandana Vajjanarandana Kamunadiya Vanajai Onatira Vanajai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadita Grada Shivasadi Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadita Grada Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Kodanitai Maya Pushasi Kodanitai Jaya Maya Pushasi Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gauraribo, Raribo, Raribo, Nitai Gauraribo. Shri Giri Radha, Shri Nrsimha Vamana Deva, Jai Jai Gaur. As June came and down, the weather remained very hot. The sky was being a clear blue, it turned hazy as the first moisture arrived. Even at 4 p.m., crowds of the morning appeared to be around the stable, finding most of their activities either the morning or the late afternoon and evening. Even eating was excluded from the midday hours since the heat killed the appetite. The Yamuna was shallow and hot, giving to the least. The cows were brought from the lack of grass and feed, and occasional hot, searing winds raised dust clouds. Flies and mosquitoes died in the air. One of the few pleasant features of the summer was the fragrance of bellflowers that clinged to the walls of the The first days of June should have felt like the experience something. After the morning rise, and when being brought down to the car, he said, "Soon I will get down and walk myself." His old friend from Allahabad, Dr. Ghosh, came and diagnosed his disease. His anxiety for the devotees to Krishna consciousness was Prabhupada agreed. He did not follow the doctor's order, since it includes having his blood pressure checked regularly and taking various medicines and special treatments. receiving massages from the servants, he felt he was good. At this rate, he said, you will be all right after a month and a half. He stressed, I'm not leaving Vrindavan until I am well. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continue our study of the Cantos Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, Text 61. The final text in this chapter. Shri Narada Vacha Iti Taicha Patirvakyam Iti Taicha Parirvakyam Nitir Akarnya Sashnusa Nitir Akarnya Sashnusa Putra Shokam Shanatyakta Putra Shokam Shanatyakta Tadvichitam Adarayat Tadvichitam Adarayat Shri Narada Vacha Iti Taicha Patirvakyam Ditirakanya Sashnusha Putra Shokam Kshunatyakva Tadvichitam Adarayat Shri Narada Vacha Iti Taicha Patirvakyam Ditirakanya Sashnusha Putra Shokam Kshunatyakva Tadvichitam Adarayat. Shri Narada Vacha Shri Narada Muni said, Iti, thus, Daityapate, the king of the demons, Vakyam, the speech, Diti, Diti, the mother of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, Akanya, hearing, Sashnusha, the wife of Hiranyaksha, Putra Shokam, the great bereavement for her son Hiranyaksha, Kshanat, immediately, Taktva, giving up, Tadve, in the real philosophy of life, Chitam, heart, Adarayet, engaged. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki. Sri Narada Muni continued. Diti, the mother of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, heard the instructions of Hiranyakashipu along with her daughter-in-law, Rushabhanu, Hiranyaksha's wife. She then forgot her grief over her son's death and thus engaged her mind and attention in understanding the real philosophy of life. Please repeat. Sri Narada Muni continued. Diti, mother of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, heard the instructions of Hiranyakashipu along with her daughter-in-law, Rushabanu, Hiranyaksha's wife. She then forgot her grief over her son's death, and thus engaged her mind and attention in understanding the real philosophy of life. Purport. When a relative dies, one certainly becomes very much interested in philosophy. But when the funeral ceremony is over, one again becomes attentive to materialism. Even daityas, who are materialistic persons, sometimes think of philosophy when some relative meets death. The technical term for this attitude of the materialistic person is smashana vairagya, or detachment in a cemetery or place of cremation. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, four classes of men receive an understanding of spiritual life and God. Artha, the distressed; Jigyashu, the inquisitive; Artarthi, one who desires material gains; and Jnani, one who is searching for knowledge. Especially when one is very much distressed by material conditions, one becomes interested in God. Therefore, Kunti Devi said in her prayers to Krishna that she preferred distress to a happy mood of life. In the material world, one who is happy forgets Krishna or God. But sometimes, if one is actually pious but in distress, he remembers Krishna. Queen Kunti Devi therefore preferred distress because it is an opportunity for remembering Krishna. When Krishna was leaving Kunti Devi for his own country, Kunti Devi regretfully said that she was better off in distress because Krishna was always present. Whereas now that the Pandavas were situated in their kingdom, Krishna was going away. For a devotee, distress is an opportunity to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. That ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 2nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. Om Jnanatamrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Chaitanya-manobhishtam stapitam jena bhutale swayam rupa gadam mayam dadanti swapadantikam. They're elevated because they have the culture and the propensity to actually assimilate this philosophy, which is a sign of advanced culture. And so in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about smashna vairagya. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. Sanskrit is such a beautiful language sometimes. And maybe I'm some speculation. We're surrounded by death. Our loved one dies. We're in the cemetery. And thoughts start to come in. Hang on a second. Why is this person being taken? What is this all about? Why are we situated in this such anxiety? What is that when we die? Where do we go? I can see that this person I loved, their bodies before me, their bodies are placed into the cremation, but they're not there. Therefore, there's some separation between the body and the soul. So these thoughts, they occur. Um, but Maya, she's very strong, and Maya is Krishna's thankless servant. Um, she's a an expansion of Krishna's internal energy. She's an expansion of Srimati Radharani, and she's in charge of maintaining this material world, this prison house. And basically, it's like this in the spiritual world right now is like a party, and Krishna's at the center, and everyone has the same mentality that Krishna is the object of he's a supreme enjoyer. We have this relationship where we want to serve Krishna. And we currently in the material world, we're trying to deny that sort of feeling. And if we were to enter into that party, we would ruin the mood, very much so. Therefore, Maya, she's preventing us from entering into the spiritual world while we still have that mentality, but she's encouraging us to develop this mentality. So she's very, very strong. And so even though we may get some little glimpse when death occurs to a loved one, to a family member, we may get some glimpse into understanding that that death is sort of the all-pervading aspect of our existence here, and therefore we should inquire about the absolute. Maya, she very quickly covers over this propensity. Maya has two facilities in which she acts. She covers a living entity, and then she throws them down. So she covers by making us satisfied with the situation that we're currently in. This is a very, very scary potency of Maya, is that no matter how ridiculous or how horrendous the situation is, she makes us satisfied by that. Because we've got no taste for spiritual happiness, you can see there's people will be out in the street. We were in Glasgow on Saturday. We're having an incredible time on Harinam and chanting, etc. But other people are out in the cold, in the rain, drinking, etc. And by any sort of standard, they're not happy, but they're not realizing that because they're covered by the potency of Maya. So she covers us, makes us think that we're happy in this horrendous situation, and then she throws us down, gradually engage in more abominable activities until until we finally learn a lesson. We were listening recently to one Prabhupada class, and Prabhupada was giving proof of how the living entities are made, how they're satisfied and happy even in the most abominable situation. Prabhupada was saying, you look at the hogs. How can you tell the hogs are happy? Maybe I asked the devotees, can anyone tell me, how do you know the hogs are happy? This is according to Prabhupada.
They're smiling.
Not smiling, no.
If you take them out of the hog field, still they don't want to go out of the hog field. No, I'm fine. I'm all right. I'm happy.
Yeah. Also, in this one class you had, Prabhupada, he gave a different proof. He said, you can tell they're happy because they're fatty. Because you cannot be fatty unless you're happy. But even in the most abominable situation, you can feel, because of the potency of Maya, you can actually feel satisfied there. And that ridiculous satisfaction then prohibits you from actually engaging in spiritual realization from any sort of advanced culture of knowledge. And this is why Krishna creates the material world in such a way as to create distress. Maya, she's also described, she's like a dog, a barking dog, and she's biting at our heels, and she's chasing us all the way to Krishna. So the material world is throwing up so many different calamities and distresses and different reasons, but all of these are ultimately opportunities for us to take shelter of Krishna, to remember Krishna, because Krishna is known as Bhakta Vatsala. Krishna is the protector of his devotees, and Krishna, he enjoys this relationship of being Bhakta Vatsala. He relishes this relationship. We even see in the material world, everything has its original source. Janma Jasya Yato. That everything has its original source in the spiritual world. So we see the same propensities there. Perhaps there is some father. He will take pleasure in being able to protect his children. There's a certain rasa there. Originally, this rasa is coming from Krishna. Krishna likes it when his devotees are dependent upon him. We may think, well, why should I become dependent upon Krishna? I'm putting Krishna into some difficulty. Why don't I just look after my own material needs and then try and worship Krishna on the side? Why do I have to put Krishna into so much? You ask him to personally serve me. But ultimately, everything is coming from Krishna anyways. Whether we engage in developing some big business in agriculture so that we've got food for an entire village, etc. Still, all this is either directly or indirectly coming from Krishna. It's from, we cannot produce the rains that are needed to nourish the grains. We cannot produce the minerals which are needed to build the machinery. We cannot produce any of these things in ourselves. So all coming from Krishna. So ultimately, if we just simply take shelter and become dependent, then we're actually able to engage in this rasa. But then, of course, we understand as well, the more we hear about Krishna, that Krishna likes his devotees to be dependent upon him. But even greater than this, Krishna likes to be dependent upon his devotees. And this is the beautiful... This is the understanding of God which you cannot get from philosophy. This only comes by the mercy of the Vaishnavas. We get to understand this intimate aspect of Krishna, that Krishna ultimately likes to be dependent upon his devotees. And this is a potency of hearing about Krishna. Simply all we have to do to achieve success in spiritual life is ultimately develop a desire to hear about Krishna. The message of Krishna are completely pious and completely purifying, and Krishna is situated in the heart. Shrinvata swagata Krishna punya shravana kirtana Ridyantasto hibadrani vidnoti satam. The Krishna he's situated inside the heart, and he's simply waiting there. He's waiting there because he's so eager for the living entity to come back to him. He knows this engagement he's in, trying to enjoy this material world, is simply suffering. And Krishna wants us to be engaged in that relationship with him again. So he's simply sitting in the heart, waiting until we develop the slightest desire to hear about him. The slightest desire. And when we hear about him, then it said, Ridyantasto hibadrani, that from within the heart, Krishna purifies all the dirty things which are there. All the material contamination, all the material desires. Situated in the heart, Krishna purifies us. This is the potency of hearing. Shravanam kirtanam Vishnu smaranam. That spiritual life starts with hearing. And ultimately, spiritual life ends with hearing. Hearing comes in many forms, but hearing has to be done. It's described at the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Maybe I'll just find the verse.
The first verses in the Bhagavatam, they glorify the Bhagavatam very much. It says, completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavat Prabhana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears a message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. The key here is attentively and submissively. And by this desire to hear, then the Supreme Lord is established in the heart. And Krishna is already in the heart, but he's there in an aspect of neutrality, as the all-pervading, it's the Paramatma, the localized Paramatma. And he's equal to every living entity. Oh, you want to enjoy material life? Okay, I'll simply facilitate that. But when we begin to actually attentively and submissively hear his messages, he's no longer neutral in this relationship. Then he's back to Vatsala. Then he sees us as a devotee and he's protecting us and he's bringing us back to him. And therefore he's arranging all these material circumstances to encourage us to actually take shelter of him. So we can relish this relationship of being dependent upon him. And so by this process of hearing actually gives us vision. People think that we see through with our eyes, but in spiritual knowledge we see with our ears. And therefore, I was just reading one purport recently. Again, it's in the first canto. And it shows by how through the mercy of the spiritual master, we can actually see Krishna. So this is the pastime of Narada Muni. He's describing how previously he was born son of a maidservant, but he was engaged in the service of the Bhaktivedantas. And so in the purport Prabhupada is writing, one should therefore choose a bona fide servant of the Lord, constantly engaged in his service, accept such a servant as a spiritual master, and engage himself in his service. And Prabhupada says, such a spiritual master is the transparent medium by which to visualize the Lord, who is beyond the conception of the material senses. So the spiritual master is the transparent medium, so the means by which that we can see the Lord. He goes on to explain what this means. So Prabhupada says, by service of the bona fide spiritual master, the Lord consents to reveal himself in proportion to the service rendered. So ultimately everything comes through from service. We hear, and the hearing results in service to the spiritual master. We cannot serve Krishna directly. We serve Krishna through the spiritual master. And by this service, Prabhupada is saying, Krishna consents to reveal himself in proportion to the service rendered. In the Gita, Krishna is describing that he's not revealed to those who are envious, etc. But ultimately, everything is Krishna's energy, and he can manifest. And for the pure devotee, they can see nothing but Krishna. Then Prabhupada says, utilization of the human energy in the service of the Lord is the progressive path of salvation. The whole cosmic creation becomes at once identical with the Lord as soon as service in relation with the Lord is rendered under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. So the entire cosmic creation becomes identical with the Lord. We understand everything is Krishna's energy. And therefore, and Prabhupada is then clarifying what this means. He says, the expert spiritual master knows the art of utilizing everything to glorify the Lord. The expert spiritual master knows the art of utilizing everything to glorify the Lord, and therefore under his guidance the whole world can be turned into the spiritual abode by the divine grace of the Lord's servant. The spiritual master is expert in utilizing everything for the glorification of the Lord. uh, including the disciple. He knows the expert spiritual master. He fully understands the disciple and understands how to engage him in the glorification of the Lord. And anything, once it becomes engaged in the glorification of the Lord, then it becomes spiritualized. This is, many people, they falsely renounce the material world, seeing it as separate, or somehow separate from the spiritual world. But ultimately, everything is Krishna's energy. And simply, Maya means it's been separated from Krishna. Its relationship with Krishna has been forgotten. But everything has a relationship with Krishna. And therefore, it doesn't matter what it is, we can be peeling carrots. The carrots are material, but as soon as they're peeled for Krishna, then they're spiritualized. Jai Shishikuntai Mayapur Shashiki. And therefore, this is the potency of spiritual distress. Now, distress in the material world, Prabhupada is describing the purport of where if there's no piety, then distress simply causes anxiety. It does not make us turn towards Krishna. But for one who is sufficiently pious, or more importantly for a devotee, then distress is an impetus for remembering Krishna. They can see the distress as they can see Krishna's hand directly in that activity. And there's nothing more glorious than being able to remember Krishna in any situation. Therefore, that distress, it's funny, Prabhupada often uses the phrase special mercy. Now, devotees get a little bit afraid when they hear the phrase special mercy. It's like, do I really want some special mercy? I just want some ordinary mercy. I want mercy in the form of prasadam. I want mercy in the form of, some senior devotee can be nice to me and compliment me, and this is the mercy I want. I want the mercy of seeing the deities and seeing how beautiful they are. I want this mercy, but I'm not sure about the special mercy. But the special mercy, it's got a slightly acquired taste. But ultimately, once we understand where this mercy is coming from, then that taste becomes very, very relishable. Because all the distresses in the material world, they serve as an impetus to remember Krishna. And also we're hearing in the second verse of the Bhagavatam that by hearing about Krishna, it actually uproots the threefold miseries. The miseries caused by other living entities, the miseries caused by the devatas, and the miseries caused from our own mind and body, etc. Now, we may still have a material body. We may still be affected by the cold and the wind and the rain and the hunger and mosquitoes and everything else. But it's described, Iha yasya hare dashe karmana manasagira nikalashavastashu jivan mukta suchate. That when one is fully engaged in the service of the Lord, all his karma, all his words, all his thoughts, all his activities are engaged in the service of the Lord unflinchingly. Then, although he still has a material body, although he's still engaged in a material situation, he is liberated. Jivan mukta suchite. So in this sense, when one is liberated, they're fully engaged in the service of the Lord. They are like that iron which has been placed deep into the burning furnace and has become red hot, just like fire. So similarly, their whole existence has become completely spiritualized. By being fully engaged in the service of the Lord, then any sort of material impediment, they simply serve as an impetus to remember Krishna more. And Krishna, he has this particular relationship with his devotees. It's very nice. I was speaking to a devotee on book distribution recently, and he was talking about the Bhagavad Gita. And he was talking about the rasa between Krishna and Arjuna, which I never really thought about before. So, we understand Arjuna, he asked Krishna to show him his universal form. And this devotee was describing it, it's like, go on then, show the universal form, go on. As the Krishna shows the universal form, and then Arjuna goes, oh, go back to the other one, and then go on, show your forearm form, go on. And then and there's certain rasa there. And ultimately, Krishna likes to have this rasa. He likes to glorify his devotees. And therefore, he puts them also in situations whereby they naturally become glorified. We often hear that the diamond shines brighter against a dark background. Therefore, Krishna arranges situations from which to allow the glory of his devotees to shine even brighter. Um, it's a special form of mercy. So ultimately, Queen Kunti Devi, she's um, an exalted devotee, but she's praying that Krishna is only accessible to those who are materially exhausted. For those who have had completely enough of this material life. And so Krishna's, again, very merciful, is that he's forcing us to have enough of this material life. Krishna wants us to come back to him. So perhaps we're going to open up for some comments or questions just now, and continue discussion. Yes, please, Ashish Prabhu.
Thank you, bro. Very smashing class. Giving a special mercy. A couple of questions, Prabhu. So one on this abominable condition, so like the hog thing, say, many times we observe people at work, friends, family, they like think that us practicing Krishna consciousness, we are having such a austere life, waking up early in the morning, so much rules, regulations, restrictions, enjoy life. Look at me, I'm so happy, all of this. And look at you, you're always so, why are you so dull, grave, and all? So what to kind of say to them?
Just invite them for the Sunday program. I mean, I was even reading today, actually, there's no such thing as renunciation. Report doesn't really, you can't, the living entity, if he gives up everything, he gives up his own existence. Simply, we give up something lower for something higher. Materially speaking, this can be that we may take on lots of austerities, we may only eat very, very limited foods, perhaps for some health reasons, or we may sleep only a couple of hours, so we become very successful at work. Whatever it is, there's some higher gain long term. And so in spiritual life, it's simply like this, that we're just realizing that these material things, that they've actually got no pleasure. They're stressful to begin with. There's anxiety during them, and then when they're finished, there's lamentation. Um, but we cannot directly combat people's mentality, because they're under the influence, just like us, of Maya, who's very, very strong, and she's telling them that this is where you find happiness. And therefore, simply, you just have to engage people in being able to relish Krishna consciousness. But is that famous a letter Prabhupada's writing, that he's, look at these boys and girls, they're giving up everything, and now they're living in a mansion, and they're all bright faced. They've got nice food. See, even materially, there's nothing to lose about Krishna consciousness. And it's like that. You feel very protected. You have any thoughts?
Not any clear thoughts. So, yeah. Is it okay if I go to the second question, Prabhu?
Please.
So thank you for sharing that purport, if I believe 1523. And is it, did I hear like a spiritual master expert spiritual master can engage everything in the service of Krishna, of course, including the disciples. So in this everything, like, again, if someone, okay, this is alcohol, I don't have anything, take this alcohol and use it in the service of Krishna, or does everything mean literally everything?
I mean, the alcohol is, originally you got a pure substance, which is then being contaminated. But you take it in its pure state. Like anything what we do in the material world is like, you see, like Pippi is cutting some carrots. There's like the carrot gets donated perhaps from the shop, and it comes and maybe it's a bit old. He cuts off the bad bits, and then it can be cooked nicely and offered to Krishna. So similarly, what we're doing, uh, the basic propensity of alcohol is people, they want to be intoxicated, and this in Krishna consciousness, this intoxication, it comes in different ways, much more relishable ways. Yeah, Sankirtan is a form of intoxication, isn't it? This, but some things which are abominable in the mode of ignorance, they have to be given up.
So, like the pastime where Nanda Maharaj is getting devoured by that big serpent, that's the and when Krishna kills it, then he's killing the anatta of thinking that we can use intoxication to enhance Krishna consciousness. That's the anatta. And we had that experience in ISKCON. One leader, he was a guru actually. So he was calling the LSD Mahaprashadam after it had been offered on the altar. The idea was to try and enhance the practice of Krishna consciousness. So Rupa Goswami says, accept anything favorable and reject anything unfavorable. So we follow the regular principles and we renounce those activities because they're unfavorable. They'll lead to the mode of ignorance. And if we follow them, they'll elevate us into the mode of goodness. So intoxication destroys austerity.
Can I ask how this demon represents
The tendency to think that we can use intoxication to enhance Krishna consciousness, because you become devoured by it. And Krishna breathing in fire is to free us from intracommunal conflict. And if you meditate on that, you see that the fire is not just coming from the people you're having problems with, it's also coming from you. This fire of antagonism and aggression. Yeah, I had a question about the purport, if that's okay. It was just, she then forgot her grief over her son's death and engaged her mind and attention in understanding the real philosophy of life. And it doesn't say that she then engaged in Krishna consciousness. That's what you're expecting, right? She gets free from her grief, and then you see the word engaged, and you're expecting devotional, but devotional service isn't mentioned. Engaged their mind and attention. So what happened then? Did she become a jnani? She didn't become a devotee?
Yeah, I don't know at all. But just from the purport, Prabhupada is referring to like a temporary realization. Maybe perhaps Prabhupada is using this to talk about our situation, which is different. But Prabhupada talks about this smashing of vairagya, temporary renunciation, because still then we later hear Hiranyakashipu goes to so much. Yeah, so I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, forgot her grief is a powerful statement. It sounds very conclusive, very that chapter of her life was finished. Like she never went back to that. Forgot her grief and moved on to she'd got the association of Yamaraj, a pure devotee of Mahajan, and that was enough to set her off on a different course. So it's just, due to her piety, she was able to do that.
It's primarily referring to Diti. We forgot a grief. So we're referring to DT.
Yeah.
Forgot a grief.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And engaged the mind and attention. It sounds like a long-term transformation taking place
Yes.
there, you know,
it sounds like some sort of Jnana yoga or something.
some epiphany.
But we've seen the characteristic of DT beforehand is his old pastimes wants a son to kill Indra.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much I don't know the sort of protective, paternal, slightly
Yeah.
like a sort of demonic representation of the motherly affection seems to take over. But perhaps now this is the moment where she. But like Prabhupada talks about, you can never have like nectar even touched by the lips of a serpent becomes poison. So the Hiranyakashipu is giving spiritual instructions, but it would seem that he's more like a serpent. He has an intention to kill Vishnu, even though the instructions themselves may actually make a lot of sense.
It's interesting also because we're talking about truth, and truth is the truth, whether it's a demon coming across it, or whether it's a devotee coming across it, the truth remains the truth. How they process that and how they conduct themselves after that may be different, but the fact that they have stumbled across the truth remains the same. The truth remains the same. Understanding the real philosophy of life. So,
But I mean, ultimately, unless you realize that you're an internal, that in the instructions they got here, it wasn't talking about their internal relationship with Krishna. It's that they're not the body. This is sort of temporary. You have many different parents, etc. Don't become, which is truth, but it's not. You know, again, that the first verse of the Bhagavatam is talking about parama. You know, the dharma projita kaitavo traparamo matsanam satam. That this is the ultimate truth. It is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Yeah.
And the ultimate truth is ultimately you're taking shelter of Krishna. So you can have sort of truths which are like subsections of that, but they're ultimately they're dependent upon that truth. Unless you get to there, then was one of the Christian philosophers said you've got this big God-shaped hole in your heart. You can't be filled with anything else.
yeah, there's a description in the Bhagavatam of the subterranean heavenly planets. So they're pious and they have a tremendous control over the material energy. They can create elixirs, lakes of elixirs where they can bathe and they remain ever youthful, you know. So you could say that they understand the truth about how to manipulate the material energy, you know, how to safeguard themselves against, physical and mental problems. They've worked that one out, and the only thing is that they don't want God in the picture. They just want to control the material energy, extend their lives, and lead a very healthy, peaceful, happy life. You know.
Yeah, like even you meet some people perhaps on Sankirtan and maybe they have like they're into conspiracies, and maybe the conspiracy that they're telling you about is actually true. So everyone can't see how the government are doing this, or there's one big hoax, or whatever it is. And I mean, I've heard crazier things. There probably is a lot of these conspiracies. There's some truth in them, but they can't see the bigger picture that ultimately they're being bound up with birth, death, old age, and disease. And so it's like maybe some truth there, but it's limited in their understanding.
Yeah, there's a story in Durashanta's book. It's about a king that has a dream about a butterfly. He dreams he's a butterfly, and when he wakes up, he asks his minister, "Am I a butterfly dreaming that I'm a king, or am I a king dreaming that I'm a butterfly?" And so the actual answer is that both are dreams. So whatever level of reality you have until you realize your relationship with Krishna. It's still one form of untruth or another, you know.
Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nittai Gaur Premanande. Ananta Koti Vaishnav ki.